Alright, bro, as we get into like Tron versus like Whyfun or
Okay, so
something,
you're
bro.
advocating for pro-life and you grant this moral proposition.
Hey, bro, mute this nigga, dog. Please.
Bro, can y'all mute this nigga that's talking, bro? Nigga,
All good.
Yeah, he's rapping and shit, bro.
Going
So
crazy.
Whyfun,
sad.
just to be clear,
Bro, I'm
Whyfun,
not
you're
talking,
advocating
bro.
for
Can you get off
pro-life
my
and it's a
dick?
moral proposition. Yo, chill out.
My fault, my fault.
Mhm.
Hmm?
So we could do
Hello?
something
Yes.
else. Yeah.
You
Also, we
mumbling or
could.
you mumbling or what? Like, hello?
Hello.
You, yeah.
Yeah.
So do you want to do
Also, we could do
doxastic
something else.
voluntarism
That's
or
what I was talking
doxastic involuntary or stick to the abortion one? Because I think we agree on like our theistic stances.
about. What's your tier six on?
I hold to ADS. Obviously, I believe God exists.
Scotus or Thomas?
Thomistic.
Thomistic. Molinist or no?
You said what?
Are you a Molinist?
I don't know what that is.
Okay, never mind.
Yeah, so we could do the abortion one or metaethics.
Sure.
Okay, cool. So you're gonna advocate for pro-life?
Sure.
Okay, cool. So I believe all moral propositions, for example, abortion is morally right and abortion is morally wrong, is systematically false given error theory, and I'm more propositionally justified in that belief. I'll just give the argument. So, for any moral proposition X, if moral claims are meaningful, then they presuppose moral, like objective moral facts. However, objective moral facts don't exist, so therefore moral claims are not meaningful, and so all moral propositions, including your position, is false. Which premises do you want me to justify?
The all moral propositions don't exist. That's like kind of the.
Yeah, so moral claims, for example, stealing is wrong, helping others is good, appears to be statements that can be true or false, but they aren't typically uttered as expressions of pure emotions, like boo, stealing. So they're just mere commands, like don't steal, and they present themselves as factual assertions about the world. And the nature of the fact presupposes when we examine what kind of fact would make a moral claim true, it points towards objectivity. However, there's going to be categorical imperatives, such as moral claims that typically present reasons for action that apply to us, regardless of our desires, preferences, or goals. So maybe like you ought not to steal, even if you really want to and think you can get away with it. And only an objective fact could ground such categorical thoughts.
Let me
However,
repeat from the start.
for premise
Uh,
two, yeah,
yeah, I'm sorry. Repeat for yourself. He said
yeah, P2 is more parsimonious.
propositions seem to express emotions. That's why I cut off.
Yeah, so do you want me to restate the premises or something? Like, did you hear
No, I
premise
heard the
one?
premises. I'm talking about the last thing I heard was you
Oh,
saying that it seems to be an expression of emotions, or it is an expression of emotions.
yeah, you
So,
granted that the moral proposition that abortion is right, right, and stealing is wrong. Those appear to be statements that could be true or false, right?
yeah, there's statements that could be true or false.
Okay, yeah, and the problem here is that there is no profound, widespread, and seemingly intractable moral disagreement across different cultures and historical periods, what one society considers obligatory, maybe like arranged marriage or some shit. And so the best explanation for this pervasive and fundamental disagreement is not that one side is personally blind to the obvious objective moral facts, but there are no such facts to perceive. So it would be more parsimonious that moral beliefs are instead products of cultural evolution and social conditioning, as well as psychological dispositions and practical needs.
Yeah, you're saying. Well, I don't even think that argument follows. You're saying one because there's
Well, that
different
was the
cultures.
justification for the P2. The argument is very obviously valid, just like modest tolerance.
Are you gonna let me finish?
Oh, go ahead. For P2, that's a Bayesian
Yeah, I
account.
was
Well,
saying
not a Bayesian account,
it
it's
doesn't seem
ontological
to follow
parsimony.
that because people disagree on things, and two, yeah, because people
I never
disagree
did.
on things does not mean we should point towards it being more parsimonious the other way. Because when we talk about
Yeah.
truth, there's a difference between truth as it is in itself and as it's known to us. So
Bayesian
people fail
account.
to
Truth.
apprehend truth because of emotional reasons. It doesn't have to
Truth.
be obvious.
Do you think I made that claim? Do you think that's like a relevant critique to what I said?
Yeah. When you were
Yeah,
talking
so
about,
it's obviously not. Because when I'm talking about for P2, right? So P2 is that there's going to be less assumptions that other contrasting hypotheses would have to make ad constraints to assume. And that's going to be the explanatory burden, which grants P2 being more parsimonious because the epistemic queerness, as well as the metaphysical queerness, as well as the ontological queerness, all moral facts or propositions Well, there is no moral fact. Sorry, so all moral propositions being expressed is just like postulating psychological traits, and I think it's just better explained by them just being psychological traits, while actually having like true aptness about the world.
Just saying it's more parsimonious because it takes less
Yeah,
assumptions. I mean, I don't have
not
assumptions.
just that. Well, if you don't have assumptions, you're not going against the argument. You want to conclude?
And you said it's more parsimonious because of what else? Because if that's all I heard.
No, I would say so. When we have like when I'm talking about like the moral error theory, right? Which is the core claim
Mm-hmm.
that all positive moral like statements, for example, your position, maybe something like stealing is wrong, are false because objective moral facts is trivially does not exist. So the main focus here is that we would ask the question: do moral properties such as goodness exist like objectively, and is the moral language truth apt? And are moral judgments or cognitive or non-cognitive? So take an analogy, for example, like a physicist questioning whether force or energy exists as fundamental entities. And so the key aspect here I'm talking about for the justification for the parsimony point is just given the fact that all of these accounts are better explained by subjective like criteria that isn't objective. I believe P2 would be more parsimonious than any contrasting hypothesis.
Because it better explain. Well, no, it just leads to a contradiction if you say something
Well,
like
what's the
that.
P and not P? Yeah, what's the P and not P? Just to be clear.
Yeah, I'll put out the contradiction. It would be attributing an attribute to nothing.
Wait, you're attributing an attribute to nothing?
Yeah, I said your objection would.
Yeah, so why wouldn't? So do you when I say objective and when I say something is subjective, when I say something exists, I'm talking about having like external objective existence within reality, and something subjective is gonna be like the contrary to that. So that's what we take it to be. I don't think there's gonna be a P and not P.
Well, yeah, there is. Because when we talk about goodness, goodness is relative to an end. Did you disagree? Like, because
I'm sorry. Can you repeat that? Would I agree goodness is relative to an end? What do you mean by that? Like,
goodness is relative to the goal you're trying to achieve. So, like, if I'm trying to,
can you give me the P and not P?
yeah, I'm pointing it out, just going step by step. So, first would be goodness
Right, goodness.
is
Yeah.
relative to an end.
I'm not sure if I grant that, so I'm agnostic.
Yeah,
When I
the
explain it
reason,
to what relative to an end is. Like,
yeah, so an end would just be a goal. So, when we talk about something is only relative to the goal, if my goal is to cook and have food in my freezer, that's objectively good towards the end because it orders me towards that, or it allows me to complete the task, right? So, because goodness has this attributes relative to an end, then we would say that goodness is not a non-being, because non-being can't have any attributes, so it can't have this end. Thus, goodness must be grounded in something
I'm
in
not.
reality.
Yeah, so something objective reality. So just to be clear, you said there is a P and not P because goodness is a relative to an end goal. Maybe like there is a food in my freezer, or it allows me to complete the task. So because goodness has an attribute relative to an end, we could say that goodness is not a non-being because a being would be an attribute. Do you think that's like a counter argument to anything I'm saying right now?
Well, yeah, it is a counter argument because if
Well,
goodness
I
is
mean,
rooted, let me finish. If goodness is
go
rooted
ahead.
in a goal that's relative to achieving it, then
I get
that
the
would be
gist of the
what our
argument.
that would be what our moral thing is.
Yeah,
I
I'll
mean, our
handle the
moral
argument.
standards
Yeah,
are
so you're making the equivocation
for
on
goodness.
attribute. So when you claim that goodness is an attribute because we call things good relative ends, well, you're actually making like a conflation between the projection and ontology. So calling something good, maybe because food is in my freezer is good, is a subjective evaluation, not proof of the objective attribute. For example, saying this poison is good for killing rats projects a functional property relative to a goal, but it does not mean that goodness exists as a mind-independent universal. So relativity ends makes goodness like epistemological in the way that we describe utility, not ontological, which is a real attribute. And for the relativity ends proves good isn't non-being, well, you're retarded because goodness vanishes without observer's end. So if no beings existed to have goals, maybe like nourishment, task completion, or goodness would not exist. However, with mind-independent properties, maybe mass charge would persist without observers. So take for analogy, like being edible is relative to digestive systems. So without animals, edibility ceases to be a property. Like similarly, without goodness ceases to exist, proving it has no intrinsic being. You're also making a misunderstanding in non-being. Because when you say non-being can have attributes, so goodness must exist. Well, goodness isn't an attribute of non-being. It's just a human construct projected onto being. So, for example, when you say that the food in your freezer exists, it has a being, but its goodness is, well, not a property of the fucking food itself, you moron. Its molecules have no moral valence. And it's just a relational judgment by you based on your goals. So judging something good is not the same thing as discovering an attribute in the thing itself. Like what? You're also confusing utility with moral goodness as well. So when you talk about functional utility, when you're talking about food nourishes, proves goodness is real, well, there's something called the instrumental versus moral goodness. And so the instrumental goodness is X is good for goal Y, maybe a knife is good for cutting, but that's descriptive, not normative. And there's something called moral goodness, which X is good, like maybe kindness is good, but you're conflating them because even if instrumental goodness exists relative to ends, it does not follow that moral goodness exists objectively. So, for example, if I say arsenic is good for poisoning, that's instrumental. That does not imply poisoning is morally good and exists. So I can have a counterexample, like for the relativity of good. So you can say, well, imagine Alice is starving and she says this food is good relative to her goal, which may be survival, but Bob is allergic and you say this food is bad relative to his good, which is avoiding some sort of disease. The food's goodness or badness depends entirely on the observer's goals, and there's no stable attribute of goodness in the food itself, and it has no ontological reality beyond the subjective evaluation. So there's no P and not P, you suck. We can conclude.
Yeah, so you rambled on after misunderstanding my objection. So one,
Our name is
I was not attributing the attribute. I was not attributing the goal towards the end as an attribute. Or the action towards the end as an attribute. What I was saying was the attribute was the end itself. That's what I'm talking about. So from a thing's nature, it has certain ends. Say, for example, the human nature as its end has sustenance or to be sustained. This is why, like, even subconsciously, our bodies do a lot of things to keep us alive. That's why we have the urge to eat, etc., etc., etc. Our natural appetites are ordered towards sustenance. So because of that, the goodness would be the fulfillment of that goal, or the actualization of the potency. So what I'm saying exists in reality is the end in the nature. So then, what other objections did you bring up? You said,
Jesus Christ.
yeah, it's just from what I remember,
None of
just
this is
express some
valid.
judgment. If I forgot, then I'll just
This is
dismiss, so we can bring it up.
Are you done, bro? Shadow boxing? Jesus Christ. Yeah, so I'm not gonna lie. Careless, you already know what I'm about to say. I'm just gonna pull a careless. I'm not gonna lie. You're making a fundamental error in the teleology and the biological is descriptive, so it's not gonna be normative. So you're making a very, very, very huge
What do you mean?
blunder. So yeah, so you're making a naturalistic fallacy. So when you claim that biological end implies moral goodness, that's what you said because I wrote it down. You cannot derive an ought moral goodness from what is a biological function. This is like a very, very tier 5 blunder. So, for example, cancer cells actualize their potency. Maybe growth, survival, is this good? And parasites fulfill their nature by harming hosts. Maybe is that good? But the biological success does not equate to the moral value existing. And when you make the fucking blunder and the confusion between the teleology, which is just descriptive and not normative, if you claim that our bodies subconsciously seek survival and that implies this proves goodness and that's actual, you're making confusion between the biological process, which are mechanistic and not purposive. So they result from evolutionary adaptation, not intrinsic ends, you fucking retard. For example, a fever fights infection not because it aims at health, but because the selection favors its response. And number fucking 3, no human essence exists. So if you claim human nature has a fixed substance with defined ends, that biology literally rejects essentialism. So humans very genetically and neurologically and culturally, there is no universal human essence. For example, some humans are fucking asexual.
Low tier, Sean.
Who the fuck is that?
Good question.
What the
That nigga is
fuck?
instantly banned. Anyways, humans have no predetermined nature. Existence precedes essence. And you also made another flaw talking about that goodness as an actualizer. That's just fucking circular. Because you're claiming that goodness equals actualizing human potentials. But this assumes what it must fucking proves. Why it's actualizing certain potentials good, and it's circular because you're saying because it's human fucking nature. For example, if human nature includes aggression or war, is that actualizing this potential good? And if not, you need external moral criteria invalidating that fucking theory you want to fucking appeal to. So my account of moral error theory remains unfucking scathed because when you claim goodness exists and therefore moral error theory is false, well, moral error theory agrees that humans have interests, goals, and biological functions, which is neural facts, but we call their fulfillment good a subjective valuation. But no objective moral property goodness is fucking detected, and calling survival good is a projection of our desires, not a discovery of cosmic fucking value. So, for example, we call chocolate delicious, but deliciousness isn't an objective attribute; it's just a human response. So everything you said is fucking retarded. So the reason why error theory stands because biology explains behavior, not morality. So describing how humans function does not entail that we're proving what we ought to value. And there's no bridge from is to ought. Even if actualizing potentials is biologically innate, it doesn't follow that we should call this good. And also, there's going to be a distinction between a projection, which is not going to be a perception. So we feel that survival is good because evolution hardwired us to desire it, but not because we detect moral properties. So your argument literally conflates something called teleological biology, which is a disputed metaphor, with normative ethics, and you committed that naturalistic like fallacy, and you fail to engage moral error theory's core claim that objective moral properties do not exist, even if human purposes do. You can like try to respond.
Okay. I made notes of your point. So I don't think you know the position I hold. It's a natural law theory. So goodness is
You're not holding
relative
the
to
natural
what.
law theory. Just to be clear, your position is that abortion is morally right, and you agree that's a fucking
Yeah, I'm
moral
telling you
proposition.
Yeah, listen.
That shit is not natural.
Yeah, I'm saying that
This
things
nigga's
and
so
goodness is relative to an end,
I
right?
guess you're making that
So
claim, bro.
let me finish. I'm saying what you are. That's what a natural law theorist says. That's all we think goodness is. So this is what I'm arguing for. And you're saying not actualizing all potentials isn't good. Well, again, you fail to recognize that it's relative to an end.
Is that what you think? All I said. Well, we can conclude,
Let me
bro.
finish. Let me finish.
You're so confused. So you
Yeah.
said goodness is relative to an end,
Let
so
me,
natural law theory is all we think goodness
let-
is. Can you explain why natural law theory refutes or rebukes moral error theory?
yeah, let me finish.
And why it's relevant? Go ahead.
Yeah. So yeah, this is why I was saying that this does prove moral goodness. Why it seemed like I wasn't refuting it to you, but also I talk. I mean,
I get
you
you
cut
can
me off in
claim
the
it
middle of the
proves it,
mix.
bro.
Let me
I
finish.
get
You
you
cut me
can
off in the
claim
middle
it
of the
proves
mix
it,
for
bro.
affections. Yeah.
I mean,
So
you're
since
like
it's
shallow
relative,
boxing. Like
then
this is really bad.
no. Okay. But when we talk about, like you said, the poison or the cancer being able to grow is good for the cancer, but it's bad for the human. Right? That's why I said it's good relative to an end. And then you got on to saying essences don't exist. But the essence existence distinction is due to if you don't have it, then you can't distinct things. Things would all be one, via transitivity. Because if A is identical to B and B is identical to C, then they're identical to each
Is
other.
that what you
And if
think I
C and R are
said, you
identical to
retard?
just the existence. Yeah,
You
you
think
said
I said
prove that
essence doesn't
essence.
exist? You think I
You
said
said prove
essence?
that
We can
essence
conclude.
exists.
We can conclude. You're a dumbass. Holy shit. Oh, let's wrap this
Bro,
up.
you're
Let's wrap this up.
death, nigga.
Yeah, let me finish. The last thing you said was the mix.
Mhm.
Just because it's biological doesn't mean it. Just because we naturally, our bodies
Oh,
naturally
my
do this, does
body.
not mean that
Mhm.
that we have this as an end. What I'm trying to derive to you is what's common between humans. That's what we determine its nature to be. And since we already have the essence energies, the essence existence distinction from before, then we know that human natures do exist. And if human natures have these natural orderings, which I think you already conceded that all humans have this biological function where they like try to survive or do what they can to survive,
Yeah.
then this would prove. Because it's
Yeah,
common.
I think you're just begging the question. You want to conclude?
I mean, you can think that, sure.
All right. Before that, let me respond to the natural law theory. Well, I don't even think I need to. But when you say goodness is reducible to natural ends, therefore natural law theory explains all morality, there's like hella flaws in this as well. And that's the implicit claim that you're making here. Because the problem is that natural law illegitimately jumps from descriptive facts, which is human biology, to prescriptive value, more like moral oughts. So take for a counterexample, like maybe a fact could be like humans evolved to reproduce, and it would be fallacious to say therefore infertility is immoral in reality, we don't condemn infertile people. So that proves biology is distinct from morality. So there's no logical bridge between human nature and moral obligations, you fucking retard. And there's another fucking problem, which ends count as morally relevant because natural law theorists cherry pick reproduction, aggression, and homosexuality. So there's calling some traits natural reproduction, but others unnatural homosexuality reflects cultural bias and not biology. Also, there's going to be another fucking flaw because natural law assumes nature has purpose, which will be the ad hoc constraint will render it less rationally probable than the moral error hypothesis, given that ad hoc constraint, because in reality, evolution is purposeless. So traits persist by random mutation and natural selection, and no ends only by survival like advantages in specific environments. So for example, take like sex is like for like pro recreation and contraception is immoral, but in biology, sex also bonds partners and reduces stress. And so evolution has no goal. And there's another fucking flaw because not when you claim or imply natural law is universal because human nature is fixed, there's actually many priors that suggest the contrary, such as communal and hunter-gatherers implying private and capitalist, and maybe sexuality. So maybe like monogamy versus polygamy versus celibacy across societies. So if morality were grounded in biology, then it wouldn't vary widely across cultures. And there's another flaw with taking that account because when you claim no, sorry. That implies as well that moral progress contradicts fixed ends. So, if you take maybe an example of slavery, well, it was like long justified as natural, and in the modern view, slavery is just universally condemned. So, if morality is defined by static natural ends, and moral progress is impossible, but we did progress. So, proving morality is just not going to be like indexed to natural law theory, right? I believe that the natural law theory doesn't go against moral error theory at all. And so, for the other dumb shit you said, when you said goodness is relative to an end, and all we think goodness is, it does prove moral goodness. When we talk about the cancer being able to grow, it's good for the cancer or bad for the human. And if you don't have essence, you don't think humans' nature do exist, and they have this natural ordering. I never said essence doesn't fucking exist. You're a fucking moron. And you also made other flaws because when you say good for X, doesn't mean moral goodness. So your cancer example proves the opposite because cancer growth is good for cancer is a biological fact. So that's a functional efficiency. And when we say cancer is bad for humans, that is a subjective valuation. So we prefer survival. So the key distinction is the functional good descriptive efficiency. Maybe knives are good for cutting. The moral good, the prescriptive obligation you ought to preserve. So inclusion, the teleology better explains the instrumental efficiency, not the moral obligation, you fucking retard. And there's also another flaw because I'm not saying, I don't know why I had to keep saying this. I'm not saying that essence exists, right? I'm saying no human essence exists. When you claim humans have a fixed essence with a natural ordering, I believe biology has higher powers to show the contrary because biology shows variation, not essence, which is maybe like dependent upon genetic diversity. So there's no universal human fucking nature gene. I need you to show fucking proof of that. And there's no fucking neurodiversity. Like brains are vary in empathy, aggression, and sociability. And there's also like different cultural plasticity. So humans thrive in maybe carnivorous or vegan lifestyles, which shows a distinction there. And we also have things like evolutionary biology, which has traits that exist on spectrums, not fixed purposes, you fucking moron. So we can conclude, bro. I'm not gonna lie, bro.
Yeah, your points you made were actually like you don't understand anything you're talking about. So when we talk about a human nature, we're not saying that there can't be different accidents in human nature. We're saying they have the same essential nature, which is a rational animal, right?
Just repeating
That's
yourself.
a common. Yeah, let me finish. That's a common human nature. Saying, well, couldn't your argument was just diversity in humans proves that we're not all common, or show me some common. So this is the evidence for what you asked for.
Is this the PNLP, by the way?
So that's what I'm talking about. It refutes your argument, and when you say,
yeah, so why does it? Can you like give a sound argument for it? Like
humans are distinct, have this property that other things don't have, have this thing that other things don't have, thus to be human. Such like plants don't possess rationality. Humans do possess rationality.
Animals also possess rationality, you fucking moron. Some animals.
No, they don't. No, they don't.
What's your semantics for rationality?
Yeah, rationality is practical
like dolphins.
practical reasoning and theoretical reasoning.
Oh. Okay, so aliens can possess rationality. Yeah, this is such a good example. Do you think that's like a? I'm not gonna lie. None of this negates anything I said. Do you want to conclude?
Just conclude.
It literally, I just pointed out what it negates, but yeah, this is
Yeah. So
what you said when you went around.
what's the P and not
To
P?
get to your other topics.
Yeah, what's the P and not P again?
That was crazy because notice how he didn't even show the biological, like, what's it called? Not even the biological, the objective
get to the other
criteria for
stuff.
goodness.
Yeah.
He just went into biology and said there's a natural order of things. Okay, sure. Is there a natural order or a Nigga's a retard.
Yeah. So
Talking
I
about
hope
the
you realize.
concept.
Wait. Yeah. So I hope you realize, you fucking retard, that moral error theory agrees that humans have interest, goals, and biological functions, which are just naturalistic facts. He never went against this. And then we can call their fulfillment good, which is a subjective valuation, which doesn't exist. But there's no objective moral property. So, and calling survival good is just a projection of our desires. So, what was in question of these having an
Yeah, you're
actual
saying it's a
objective moral
projection of our
property?
desire, but the whole thing is,
Mm-hmm.
my goal is to question whether that's a natural desire, like something, a natural appetite to the will, or is
Natural
it
appetite?
an intended end of the will? Right? There's a difference.
I don't see how that refutes anything I just brought up. Like,
Well,
because your goal is your burden is to prove that there exists objective
if
moral
there's an
property, but
objective
all you did was
entity,
beg the question.
listen, let me finish.
Okay.
I'm gonna get to the part. So I'm talking about if there's an objective nature, and if this nature has an end or a goal, then we ought to achieve that goal, because oughts are relative to ends. What you should do is what can achieve the goal, right? That's what we mean. That's what I mean by the word should. So
So
if we have
therefore,
this naturally, then we should follow these. So that would just follow from the semantics, the analytic truth.
yeah. So how is that
So
a
now,
sound
to
argument
get to your
concluding that there's
question
a
where
P
you
and
were
not P?
questioning, let me finish. So now, when you were questioning whether humans do have these natural ends, I'll give you the evidence, which is that, again, the
Yeah. So
subjective, like, humans
mhm.
sustain. They go for sustenance. They try to sustain themselves by any means possible. Right? Even if someone is brain dead, their body tries to survive. Right? They're ordered to do this naturally. It's not something they consciously do. It's a natural end of the will. It arises from nature. That's what would
Oh
point
my,
to. So
holy
because it
shit.
arises from this nature, then yeah, we have this objective criteria then. And what else did you say? You said about the homosexuality and infertile things. If morality was something objective, then why would
Holy
societies? I
shit.
don't know why you
This
don't
nigga's
understand the
retarded.
difference
So
between
Whyfun, do you
apprehending
think that
truth.
negates moral error theory? Can I just
Yes, it
respond to what
does.
you said? So, Phoenix, I hope you're listening in. So, this guy said if there's an objective nature and this nature has an end or goal, what you ought to do or should do, you achieve the goal. If we have this naturally, then we should follow this. And the subjectivity sustains themselves, even if someone's brain dead. Therefore, their body tries to survive naturally within nature. Therefore, that means moral error theory is false. Well, you're a retard because there is an unbridgeable is ought gap. So when we say bodies naturally sustains themselves and brain dead patients on life support, it's true descriptively. However, that doesn't mean that we can say that therefore we ought to sustain life, which is a prescriptive leap. For example,
Why?
cancer cells naturally, yes, retard, yes, I have to teach you this, you fucking retard. Cancer cells naturally strive to survive and spread, but by this logic, we ought not to treat cancer, but we do. So biological processes, again, It's not the same as moral obligations, you fucking idiot. You're also confusing function with value, because if you claim automatic like bodily functions, maybe homeostasis proves ends have moral value, then these are mechanistic processes, not goals. So a brain dead body on a ventilator has no teleology, but the machine sustains it, and cells don't try to survive, and biochemistry follows the causal laws. So, for example, a falling rock naturally moves towards the fucking center, but does that mean this rock ought to fucking fall, you retard? Obviously, the answer should be no. Also, there's another flaw in what you said, because there's no objective human nature exists. You keep presupposing this. This is why I keep saying you fucking are begging the question, you dumb bitch. Because humans share, you keep presupposing that like a human shared like a universal nature with fucking fixed ends and shit. But biology rejects essentialism. I keep having to repeat this because you're an idiot. Because there's no human essence that exists. Only trait variations, maybe genetic and neurological and behavioral. So there's going to also be a contradiction with natural ends, because if nature has no consistent ends, then it can't ground moral odds, you fucking idiot. And also evolution, I'm pretty sure it debunks inherent odds, because natural processes are purposeless. So traits persist via random mutation plus selection, but not inherent goals that you keep fucking presupposing. Like, for example, pain exists because it is aided by survival, not because avoiding harm is objectively good. So the implication there is valuing survival as a subjective preference hardwired by evolution, not a moral fucking truth. You dumb bitch. Also, when you make the flaw that, well, relativity destroys objectivity, given your shitty ass cancer example, when you say growth is good for cancer but bad for humans, the problem is if good depends on the entity, maybe like cancer versus human, it's relative, not objective. And so moral error theory is still going to stand here because we project good onto biology, but that doesn't imply that non-mind independent moral properties exist. So natural law doesn't refute moral error theory. Come on, let's conclude.
Okay, no, yeah. So by the very grouping humans, that proves that we have that there's a category. There's something in common which these things share, because they cannot be united in a category and things they differ in. This should be obvious. So because of that, then there must be something which humans share. Now we can talk about now because of that, and because of the essence energies distinction. I mean the essence existence distinction. Then this would be predicated to their very essence. Thus, there is this group of
This is
essences
just an
which
insane
are humans.
repetition.
This thing is
Just
ass.
one
Like,
repetition. I mean,
Nigga got stun locked into a repetition.
nature. I don't know what you're talking about. Mind independent.
so you're gonna address what I said about biology?
Nature.
Your duty butt,
All right.
bro.
What would you say
So
about?
again, why
What
is
would you
it
say about
just really getting my argument? Not
garbage? But
concluding.
what?
Yeah,
What
you're
did he?
terrible. You can go on
Yeah,
mute
I
while I'm
love you.
addressing this. You're fucking terrible. And free would like no diff you. You suck. So when you said by the very grouping there are a category what they share and what they differ. So because of that, there must be something humans share, and because of the essence existence distinction that's predicated to their existence, that's somehow going to prove my position is false or what I said is false. Obviously, this doesn't fucking follow. Obviously, there's no fucking inference rule for this, right? So you also make more flaws in this because there's I'm just gonna appeal to Wittgenstein's like family resemblance, which means there's no common essence. So the problem is when you talk about categories, they often lack a single shared property. So for example, we can have games. Some games involve competition, maybe chess. Others don't, maybe like solitaire, and some have rules, soccer, and others are like open-minded, maybe like make believe. So conclusion, um, there's going to be like an overlapping similarities, but there's not going to be a universal essence, you fucking idiot. So how that applies to the human application is that humans vary biologically by all. Oh my god, that was bad. Humans vary in their biological like nuances as well as psychological and culturally. So there's no essence that unifies or unites all. I need an argument for that, which you still haven't provided. You just provided a fucking non sequitur and begged the question. Also, you keep appealing to like some type of essentialism, which I keep refuting and you're not going against. So when you say all humans share a defining essence, that's going to be contradicted just by science, and we have more priors to suggest that's true, right? Because there's something called genetic variation, which implies that no human essence, which is a genome, which has DNA that differs significantly between individuals. And there's also neurodiversity, which has brains that vary in structure and function. Maybe like an autistic nigga like yourself, or someone who's neurotypical. So there's also going to be boundary problems. So someone can ask that at what point did the Homo erectus become human? Because evolution shows continuity, just not sharp essence. There's no fixed fucking essence. And there's also another counterexample that I could bring up about intersex people, and maybe 1% of births defy binary sexual essence. Also, you're making a categorization between something being mind dependent, which is not metaphysical. So when you say grouping proves shared properties exist objectively, which that's probably what you're trying to fucking say here. Well, we would have to talk about the categories which reflect human interest, not mind independent realities. For example, accidental people disproves essence. You're a fucking moron. You're shadow boxing. So again, for example, we group whales with mammals, not fish, based on biology. But biology itself is just the human framework. And we can have another example. Maybe an alien might categorize by habitat, maybe ocean dwellers or size, but that is grouping by our cognitive priorities, not ontological essences, you fucking idiot. And you're also making a flaw when you say the essence is predicated off of existence. The problem is that you don't know that there's a distinction between existence and essence, right? So existence adds no properties. Maybe unicorns exist versus maybe unicorns don't exist. And so there would be no change in what unicorns are. And for humans, when you say existence like precedes essence, we create our nature through choices. So even if categories exist, they don't imply fixed essences, only functional similarities. Also, there would be an infinite regress of fucking essences, because if you say shared properties require an essence, then I could just ask what is the essence of that fucking essence. So in result, if every category needs an essence, then you need an essence for essence itself, which is an infinite regress, which is fucking impossible. So for example, if I say human essence might be rationality, but rationality fucking varies, maybe emotion, intuition, and logic that requires its essence, and so on, and so on, and so on, and so on. And also, the fucking final death blow to your shitty ass, low tier ass argument, you tier 5 fucking trash can, is that there's no fucking fixed boundaries, you idiot. So it's a fucking evolutionary fact that species are dynamic continuities, not static categories. So Homo sapiens emerged gradually from maybe ancestral species, right? We have science priors for this. So there's no essence that separates us from Neanderthals. So the implication there is that categorization is a practical heuristic for survival, not a metaphysical insight. So you made a lot of confusions here between categories and essences, and you made a confusion about the reflective utility, which is not ontology. So we categorize to navigate through the world, maybe poisonous plants, not because the categories exist in the fucking reality. And yeah, we can conclude. So your argument commits the fallacy of, what was it called again? Yeah, reification, which is treating abstractions as real, and confuses epistemology with metaphysics. You're like low tier.